Lord be with you. We're continuing our study of the Gospel according to St. Mark, and we're getting started at chapter 15. We're going to read through the first 15 verses of chapter 15. And as soon as it was morning, the chief priest held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council, and they bound Jesus, led him away, and delivered him over to Pilate. And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so." And the chief priest accused him of many things. And Pilate again asked him, "Have you no answer to make? See how many charges they bring against you." But Jesus made no further answer, so that Pilate was amazed. Now at the feast he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priest had delivered him up. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have them release for them Barabbas instead. And Pilate again said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Why, what evil has he done?" And they shouted out all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him out to be crucified. This is the gospel of the Lord. So once again, we get started here. It's the morning after they have arrested Jesus and put him on trial, and we get the same people that as we said in I think one of the most recent episode. The Sanhedrin is really made up of those people that are mentioned here. We have the chief priests, we have the scribes, we have the elders. There's almost kind of an implication that there might be the whole council. So there may have been other officials that may have also been involved in this, or even just simply the secretaries and those who are have other sort of duties or offices within the Sanhedrin. But they are. As we've mentioned already, they're a historical Jewish council by which they would have made judgments, legal judgments in the community. They used to, when the Jewish people were independent, they would have had the authority to put somebody to death. But now they continue to exist, and I think you could say the Roman Empire is happy they're there within the community doing that job, but the Roman Empire is still above them. They still have the greater authority. And so the decision the authority to put somebody to death is still held within the Roman Empire. So they have their function, but now they must go to Pilate, Pontius Pilate, here the protector of Judea, and bring Jesus before him. I thought maybe a couple of words on Pontius Pilate might be of kind of some interest and a little bit of background. Actually, the first name in this case, Pontius, kind of gives us an idea of a family that he most likely is from. Now, I think you can, not surprisingly, most of the mentions of Pontius Pilate within historical documents, there is a Pilate stone that is in, I think, Galilee, and that has his name inscribed upon it. Probably is one of the biggest pieces of evidence of his existence. Other historians, non-biblical writers have mentioned him. Tacitus, who is a Roman historian, also Josephus, who is the Jewish historian. We've mentioned him quite a number of other times previously. They both bring him up. Actually, both, and a lot of what they do is they both also do talk about the crucifixion of Jesus, which is kind of a fascinating sort of thing in terms of reminding us how significant that if there's a Roman historian writing about Jesus, this must have been something maybe bigger than we even could understand in terms of the larger Roman Empire hearing about these events taking place as well. But it actually, the Pontius or Josephus also, maybe I'll mention this as well. Pilate seems to also be kind of a first name or possibly some sort of nickname, is some of the speculation. Again, we don't have very much information, so a lot of what I'll kind of bring about is is kind of what other historians have speculated in terms of the evidence they do have. The name really kind of has within it the implication of being a javelin thrower, that maybe that is applied to the Pontius Pilate we know, maybe it applied to a family trait, and maybe his father was a great javelin thrower in some previous manifestation. They are, the Pontius family seems to be kind of a middling nobility family, of middle nobility within the Roman Empire. The one thing I read kind of put them in a equine grouping, which is as you know, Latin word for horse is equus, and that they would have probably been maybe a soldier family, a military family that would have ridden on horses into battle. So you kind of have your foot soldiers, and then you have your higher ranking soldiers who would have been able to ride horses into battle, and then probably also, since they probably were a military family, that throwing the javelin, or great success of throwing the javelin, may have been something that they would have been part of that as well. I think the other thing is that, and Josephus, as you read him, he gives us, I think, at least 3 different examples of Pontius Pilate rubbing the Jewish people wrong. One is he does under the stealth of night at some point in his rule, and he rules between probably about 26 and 36 A.D. In terms of, so a good, and actually probably what is seen as possibly a very good long rule. In terms of length, and which may also, some have speculated, well, he was there for 10 years. Maybe he wasn't doing such a bad job as others would accuse him of having done. But under stealth at night, at some point during his rule, he brings in statues of Caesar into Jerusalem and has them set up, which not surprisingly violates that you shall make no graven images, and the Jews are very upset by it, and they really have to plead with him to finally have those removed, even to the point they'd say, I'd rather you kill me than leave those there. And I think understandably that it makes him realize this is a very important thing. There is also an indication that he redirected the water flow and brought more water into Jerusalem, but of course, not surprisingly, so he builds viaducts to bring water into Jerusalem, but then upsets those people whom he's taken the water away from. And maybe one of the interesting points is he uses money from the temple treasury to do that, which might kind of play into something else I'll bring up in a moment here. And then, of course, the other thing is a number of Galileans that he kills, and actually Luke's gospel brings this up as well. This is the very beginning of Luke 13. There were some present at that very time who told Jesus about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. And then Jesus goes on to talk about it. But these are kind of incidents, and so in terms of some of the things that I've come across is there was a real letter writing campaign, probably from the Pharisees especially, that they wanted to get rid of him. And as we kind of speculate in terms of what is his relationship with the Jews, and again, the key word there is speculate, because we don't have really hard evidence in terms of his relationship. Some have kind of considered that maybe Caiaphas, the high priest at that time, who we have run across a couple of times here already, that Caiaphas may have been in league with Pontius Pilate, that they may have been friends, and that actually his leadership as the head high priest and Pontius Pilate's time as ruling over Judea, that they kind of they run together, is the word I'm kind of looking there for. And that maybe the two of them had kind of worked together a great deal, which maybe kind of helps us understand some of the things that are going on here as well. As I said, there is that speculation, not only because of their time together, but then when he does those viaducts to bring water in, or aqueducts to bring water into Jerusalem, that he's using temple money that that may have been assigned to, that the two were working together, that they were, if not friends, but at least a political allies in that sort of sense. So that's a little bit of kind of the background of Pontius Pilate. There is, some of these incidents, particularly the mingling of the Galilean blood with the sacrifices, is seen as one of the big reasons eventually that Pontius Pilate himself will be put on trial, and he will be removed, or at least sent back to Rome to be put on trial. The emperor at the time, Tiberius, dies while Pilate is in transit, and after that point, we really have no other evidence of anything else. One thing I read, just kind of point blankly, said he spent his retirement in Gaul, which of course is what we think of as France, and of course the Romans are kind of continually pushing up north in those areas. Julius Caesar had gotten into Great Britain, but then there's a lot of kind of battling with those Goths and those Visigoths and all those barbarians kind of beyond the Rhine, and those troublemaking peoples that you have in those areas of Europe who would not be submitted to the Roman rule. And so he may have gone up to the territories of Gaul, but others probably speculate that he may have just lived out a retirement in Rome after that point and kind of fades into history from there on out. So they bring him to Pilate. That's a lot of background on Pilate, but I find it interesting. I kind of assume you may also find it interesting. I think it's interesting that they do say the scribes that after, and they bound that the chief priest, they had as soon as it was morning, the chief priest held a consultation, which may indicate that there's kind of true trials that go on here. We have the one recorded in Mark, but there may have been another consultation in the morning. So maybe there's kind of two events that are taking place there before we go to Pilate. But then they do take him to Pilate, and Pilate asks them the question. Of course, he knows their accusation. Are you the king of the Jews? Which is going to run not here as an important topic, but also as we go before the crowds, as you heard, he's going to ask, do you not want, what should I do with the king of the Jews? He's going to keep using that title over and over again. Jesus does not give him, this is the only answer we get out of Jesus in this whole, or these only words, you have said so. Now, why does Jesus give this vague answer and not give some sort of great confession of statement of who he is? Or why does he even speak at all? Because the rest of the time he stays quiet. I know the one thing that I read kind of speculated that there's, by just kind of uttering these words leaves him open in terms of the question of if he says I am the king of the Jews, well, there you go. He's causing an insurrection. I think John's gospel kind of says, well, you are no friend of Caesar if you let this man continue. And that same sort of image that you have there, that he would have been a rebel, an insurrection, caught, stirring up the crowds, and that's a good reason to crucify someone. That crucifixion, with Jesus, as I think we've indicated in other times, especially as we've spoken about the Jewish war in the year 70 AD, or the years leading up to 70 AD as well, probably like 67 to 70 AD, is the crucifixion is used kind of very loosely and very quickly in any sort of insurrection. This would have been the punishment for somebody leading a rebellion against the Roman Empire. But by not denying it, he is the one who is in control here. As we indicated before, even when it comes down to the end of that first trial that we discussed at the kind of the middle of Jesus before the Sanhedrin, finally they can't get witnesses to agree, but Jesus finally in the end basically, as it says, here's the evidence. I am the Christ, and you will see me coming in all of my glory with angels and archangels and all the company of heaven. So he's the one who's going to get himself convicted. So he's not trying to get out of this, but he is not giving them a straight answer. And of course, the charges are brought against him. Pilate kind of is stunned that he doesn't make any sort of reply. And so we get this whole sort of tradition of excuse me, going to the people during the Passover. You can remember the Passover is one of these events where all the Jews are supposed to come back into the city of Jerusalem. So you have Jews from all over the empire. You kind of think about, the Pentecost, and when when the reading we hear on Pentecost from the book of Acts in chapter 2, when it's listing all of these different people from all over, from Crete and from Rome, and suddenly I can't think of all the places that Medea and all the other places throughout the empire that there's Jews who've come back. The same sort of things happening at Pentecost at this time. So you have, people flooding into the city. I think John's gospel does record people coming up, Greeks coming up and asking, hey, can we meet Jesus? Can you show us, coming up to some of the disciples and asking him that question. So you kind of get this spirit that the city is not only is it kind of a festive time of the year for the Jewish people, but Jews from all over the world have come back. It's the big homecoming event, if you would, and people have flooded into the city, which in part maybe answers one of the questions I think we do have. When Pilate comes before the people with this ultimatum, that whether or not they, who should you take, Barabbas or Jesus? Who is turning against Jesus? Has the crowd just suddenly, good on Palm Sunday, as Jesus comes in, right? They're shouting, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, even the Son of David. I mean, the crowd seemed to be for him. Have they suddenly gone from Sunday to Friday to calling for his death, right? Is it those same people? Is it different people? Who, where do they come from? Why are they there? The scriptures don't give us that answer, but I think it's something we do need to kind of keep in mind. It may be the fact that you have people from everywhere, and the possibility that the chief priest is able to rile them up and make them call for Jesus's blood. Very, kind of easy to understand as well. We do also kind of have the question about Barabbas. We don't have a particular... well, actually, this is kind of the interesting thing about Barabbas. The name Barabbas, if you kind of break it into two words, is to say he is the Son of the Father, which is kind of an interesting little tidbit because Jesus is the eternally begotten Son of the eternal Father. Bar is it means the son of, and if you kind of think of a bar mitzvah, when a Jewish person has a bar mitzvah, they become a son of the covenant. Mitzvah being the covenants, the I am your God, you are my people sort of covenant that God makes with Israel. So Bar and Barabbas, Abba, is the next part of that word. So we kind of run across that word throughout the scriptures. Abba, Father, is the Aramaic or Hebrew word for father. So he is a son of the Father is his title, which I don't know if we can make anything out of that, but that's kind of an interesting little twist in this account. Or all the Gospels have Barabbas, of course, but just simply that he is the Son of the Father as well as that is his title. There's no particular insurrection, but we do have regular insurrections kind of going on. And again, we have this large crowd. We have people from all over the known Roman Empire coming into Jerusalem to make their sacrifices on the Passover, to celebrate the Passover feast. That there would be I can't think of the point I was going to make, but that they would call for Barabbas is not too surprising. Also, if their political sympathies are with insurrections, it's not too surprising. Actually, one thing I read, the two of Pilate's predecessors actually did have Passover riots that take place, and so especially when we get down to the very last verse there, when we hear about, so Pilate wishes to satisfy the crowd and releases for them Barabbas. He may just simply be not wanting a riot like his two predecessors had. Passover riots previously there, and so we have this kind of, I think it's kind of, what is a lot of this, kind of maybe is a speculation. What does Pilate want out of this? I think there's different sort of ways to read his actions and his words. In part, I think you could definitely say he's tweaking the Jews in this case. In part, just simply by using that title, King of the Jews, repeatedly, definitely gets under their skin. We see that, of course, when Jesus is crucified, and they come to Pilate and say, don't put he is the king of the Jews, but say he claims to be the king of the Jews. And Pilate says, what I've written. So this is probably an irritant right there. But even just simply, I'm looking at verse 10, he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. Not that he was a heretic exactly. And I've kind of thrown out the idea already that possibly they understood that Jesus was the Christ. If you read again Josephus in his discussion on Pilate, he refers to Jesus as being the Christ. I think there's some historians who maybe kind of question some of those passages. Were they original to Josephus? But Josephus seems to indicate himself that he had an understanding that this man may have been a Christ or the Christ in his own writing. So, but it's not just that he's a heretic or that there's an insurrection or a rebellion against the Roman Empire, but that it's out of envy. And you kind of, their pride has been hurt by this Jesus. He is the one who has he has put into question their authority, their place, their rule, and that if he is, one speculation might be that if he really is the Christ, everything turns upside down, and their place in the temple and amongst the people is going to be destroyed. And so, their honor will become shame. And you kind of, a little bit different society than we have, where honor and shame are the two big motivators in life. You don't back down from a fight because your pride is on the line, sort of thing, instead of being, kind of reasonably like, you're an idiot, I'm not going to fight you, that's stupid. You must fight because your honor is put on the line. Here their honor is on the line, and Pilate seems to know that their honor is on the line, that it's out of envy, that their hatred for Jesus is really what is driving this, their sense of their honor and their shame being the motivation behind that question as well. And they cry out to crucify him, which is, like, as I've said already, that there is a classic sort of execution for any sort of insurrection that might go on. One of the other, maybe this is the last point, because I think we've kind of hit all of it. One of the things that's kind of interesting that I came across is that, the scripture's written in what is called Koine Greek, which is kind of common Greek. So it's a Greek that is used throughout the empire, where Greek is not the original language, right? You're in Israel, they're going to be speaking Aramaic, they're going to know Hebrew, but the Greek becomes kind of the third level. It's the language of business, right? And that's a reason why a lot of times you hear that, Japanese people know English. Many more Japanese people know English than Americans know Japanese, right? Or English-speaking people are going to know Japanese because it's the language of international business. Within the Roman Empire, that Koine Greek, within this first century world, but it's kind of a little bit of a simpler, less sophisticated sort of Greek, because a lot of people are going to be needing to use it. It's not an elegant sort of Greek. The way that Pilate speaks to the crowd is he uses a very elegant sort of Greek in the way he speaks. So it's almost like somebody... And of course, all these biblical movies you've probably ever seen, they always seem to be speaking in Oxford English sort of accent, or a highbrow sort of a thespian English sort of accent. But it's as though he has spoken to them with, like, the Queen's English to their commoner sort of Greek that they might have used. So he is speaking in a very classical sort of Greek, a much more highbrow sort of Greek as he speaks to the crowd, which is Pilate definitely making a different distinction between me and you. I am different than this crowd, and I am above this crowd as well in terms of understanding this. We'll pick up in a few days, and we'll kind of, as Pilate turns Jesus over to the soldiers, and then also to discuss the crucifixion. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you, be gracious unto you. Lord, look upon you with favor and give you peace. Amen.